Now I think you're ready to go one step further. Suppose for internal purposes, Food to Go wants to assign an ID number to every food item they deliver. Let's just create a new column for this on the left. So where does data validation come in? Well, we want to control the values input into these cells so that they are in a specific format. To do this, we have to apply custom data validation settings using a formula to validate inputs. We will try out a few different formulas, starting with a simple one. Say we want all dessert IDs to be 3-digit numbers. We actually need to write a formula that specifies two criteria. The value must be a number and it must be 3 digits only. So how would our formula look? Because we need to specify two criteria, we should use an AND function, which is one of Excel's logical functions. Our function will have two arguments. The first argument will tell Excel that the cell value should be a number, while the second argument will specify the string length so we can define the number of digits. Let's select cells A2 to A9 and open the data validation tool. For the allow criteria, we have to choose custom. In the next field, we have to enter a formula to tell Excel what type of value is valid. In our case, this is our AND function. Our function syntax will look like this. If we translate this into words, we're telling Excel that the value in cell A2 must be a number and that the length of the value in cell A2 should be exactly 3 characters. Why have we entered A2 in our function? Well, when you have selected multiple cells, you have to insert the cell reference of the top leftmost cell selected as a relative cell reference, which in our case is cell A2. The correct data validation formula will be applied to all other cells selected according to their relative position. Now, this is a very important point to pay attention to. When a logical function is evaluated, it returns either true or false. What Excel does when we use logical functions for data validation is to check input values against both arguments, and the data entered will be considered valid only if they both return true. Okay, so now let's type our formula in here. We can click on this icon to make it easier to see our data while entering the formula. And we can click the same icon again to take us back to our data validation tool when we're done. Now the Ignore Blanks box is ticked, which means that if we leave a cell blank, it will still be considered a valid input. Since we want each item to have an ID number, we should untick this box. Remember, we can also customize an input message or error alert if we wish. If we don't, Excel won't show any input message, but it will show a generic error alert by default. Let's apply our settings by clicking OK, and now let's test them out by entering both valid and invalid data. Let's enter the number 123 in our first cell, and Excel has accepted that as we intended. In the next cell, let's try the number 50. When we press enter, we will immediately see a generic error alert because this is not a 3-digit number, so we will have to retry or cancel our input. Let's cancel and just leave this cell blank and move to the cell below. Now in this cell, let's try entering a 3-letter word. Once again, we get an error alert because although this value now meets the string length criteria, it's not a number. So let's retry and change it to the number 987. Okay, great. So it seems like our data validation criteria are working just as expected. Now, whenever we've used data validation, we can check for invalid data by clicking on the arrow next to the data validation icon and selecting Circle Invalid Data. This may take a few seconds, but what Excel will do is check all cells with data validation settings applied to them and circle cells that contain invalid data. Now, because we didn't change the error alert style, Excel has used the default stop style error alert, which means we were not allowed to proceed with inputting any incorrect values in cells A2 to A9, even if we try to do so. So we don't see any values we have inputted circled in red, but Excel has circled all the blank cells, which actually means that they are invalid. This is because we had unticked the Ignore Blanks box because we want to make sure that each item has an ID number. Now if we click on any of the circled cells and enter a 3-digit number, the red circle will disappear. This is a great way to check for errors in your worksheets when you're using data validation.